Hi guys, and welcome back to another video on this channel based on psychology, self-awareness, and moving towards your own self-empowerment. Today we're going to be talking about attunement and two specific attachment styles. There are quite a few attachment styles, but we'll be focusing predominantly today on the avoidant and the anxious attachment style. Sometimes the anxious style can be called preoccupied attachment style in terms of the anxiety attached to it. And there's a few reasons for that, because it becomes quite a preoccupied state with anxiety when the stimuli has moved away or abandoned them. So we're going to be looking at attunement towards avoidant and the anxiously attached attachment style. Let's first look at attunement. So attunement means when you are connected to the inner emotional state of another person. So when you are appropriately, accurately attuned to the emotional state of another. That requires that you can read in their body language and in the emotional state that they are adequately feeling the feeling you're picking up. So for example, if someone is showing you in their nonverbal behavior, which is the most important, that they're really sad or down or defeated, if you adequately respond to that and can pick that up and respond in a way that makes them feel heard and validated and seen, that means that you are attuning yourself to them. What happens in infancy is that many parents, either through their own non-attunement to themselves, through their own child rearing, do not know how to attune to you adequately. So what happens with that is a lot of that attachment and non-attunement to your needs as a child or an infant results in the development of the anxiously attached attachment style or the avoidant attachment style. Very briefly, the avoidant attachment style completely dismisses or largely dismisses their own emotional and sometimes even physical needs and just carries on with life. So they motor through life ignoring pivotal inner emotional cues and states. And as a partner, they do that to you as well, which is highly, highly triggering for especially the anxiously attached person, because we're not robotic, we have emotional needs, we need to respond to them. Interestingly, the more you avoid your emotional needs, the worse they become, because just like if you ignore a headache or if you ignore fever, it gets worse and worse. Our emotions are exactly the same thing, if not at times more devastating, because if you ignore it long enough, it can form into a full-blown breakdown or depression or very long grief episode if you don't attune properly. With that avoidant state, when we are very, very avoidant, there is that lack of proper attunement to the emotional state, and there will be statements like, I'm blowing this out of proportion. I don't have evidence for this feeling. So they dismiss the feeling. The more that they dismiss this feeling, the more they don't attune to that inner emotional state, and they just move on with life. And then when they do that with partners, they can't adequately read their partners. Fast forward to the anxiously attached partner or person within themselves. They are the polar opposite, where they tend to over-identify with their emotions. So over-identifying with their emotions is that you become the emotion. There's no moving past the emotion. When we allow emotions to regulate themselves, they do follow the natural trajectory and they move out of the body. But that is with a lot of practice, and you've got to do it for a very long time, and then you start to feel the ease. That's why if you've ever spoken to somebody who really listens to you and understands you and doesn't judge you, you'll often say or feel that you feel like this weight has been lifted off of your shoulders. That is an appropriate attunement to your emotions and then moving past it. When you identify as more anxiously attached, what happens there is that you sit too long or for too much with the emotional state, where you can't move on to other areas of your life. What that looks like is when you sit too much in your emotional state, you over-identify. So many people that are they run more anxiously attached, they will over-identify to the state that they will set a label to themselves. So they'll say, I am an anxious person. I am a depressed person. I have a problem with X or Y, but it's always too much feeling state. What that results from, or where it comes from, is often a parent in the infancy stage didn't know how to move the child from the feeling state to the solution state. So they didn't know how to adequately attune to the child's needs. So for example, we call that mirroring. This comes from Donald Winnicott. The mirroring state is when you look at a child as a parent and the child is crying and you mirror the child to try and move them too quickly from that. And you show them that you're very happy or you want them to smile and move on too quickly. The child's confused. They have internal ambivalent feelings because they don't understand why the environment doesn't adequately mirror their inner state. So many of you watching this will identify with this, because how many times have you told someone how you feel and they completely either dismiss it, misread it, or try clean it up too much? So what happens to you is either if you run or tend to run more avoidantly, you'll dismiss your own feeling. And then we might be self-deceptive, we might repress our emotions, or if you tend to be more anxious, you'll sit in anxiety too long. An appropriate response from a parent to a child at that stage, if they're being a bit anxious or very, very anxious, is to adequately attune to what the child actually needs. So say if the child, very small child, feels unsafe, or they feel unheard, or they feel bullied at school, what the child is seeking are those are three different instances that you can try and adequately attune to try and reassure the child that they'll be okay. Fast forward to adulthood and think about those times where, for example, you didn't as an adult have a good sleep. And so you wake up anxious or more sad or overwhelmed. If you tend to be more anxious, you'll sit in the emotion too long without analyzing your behavior and feeling state and saying, okay, the solution to this problem for now is to get more sleep tonight, so you can correct your circadian rhythm, set a better routine, and give yourself the adequate sleep that you deserve and need. Pivotal for that. Another aspect is like, say for example, COVID. So many things happened with COVID where people were so disconnected. There was a lot of depression and anxiety, and many people had no choice. They couldn't connect. So if you tend to run more anxious and then you over-identify with being very anxious, then you may not realize that maybe you need more connection. Maybe you're hungry for more romantic, friend-wise, family-wise. Another aspect to try and attune to yourself, if you tend to sit very much in the anxiously attached style, is to see if you need to more adequately attune from the feeling state to the solution. Is we got to shift to what do you actually need. So many times when we do couples therapy, we ask people, what do you need from each other? In individual therapy, we ask, what do you think you need from yourself in this period? That is what we call self-attunement or attunement to the other. When you are more avoidantly attached, you'll dismiss the feeling altogether and repress it, which leads to a range of different problems that come with it in the self state as well as in the couple, because if you deny your own emotions, you're more likely to deny your partner's emotions, and there will be distance, a lot of distance created in the dynamic. If you're more anxiously attached, the over-identifying of emotion doesn't allow you to move to the solution, to try and see where you're going wrong with that or where you can try and fulfill a need. That's why psychotherapy is a mixture of insight-orientated work and empathy and attunement, but we actually have to shift to solution focus. So for you to see tangible goals and tangible things that you can move, you actually need to start seeing what are the patterns that are causing this reaction in you and how can you alleviate it. It can be so many things like adequate nutrition, moving the body, getting enough sunlight. So say if you stay in areas, I often say that to people that live in the UK. So if I hear that they're moving or visiting for a long time, the impact of the weather on people's mental states cannot be under-exaggerated. It's everything. We live in an ecosystem. Everything affects us. If things haven't been processed from childhood, huge things, or you don't feel heard or seen or validated, that will cause a lot of anxiety and sad feelings. But if you dismiss them, then you're never going to get to the root of the problem as to why you feel the way you do. If you over-identify as the anxiously attached style, you think you're going to drown in these feelings. You're never going to move away from it. But when we move to the solution-focused state, as in not over-identifying with the feeling, sitting with it, seeing what it's there to show us, and then formulating a plan to intervene in a semi-structured state, because we're human, we flow, we have different needs throughout the lifespan. We can learn from these two attachment styles of how to meet in the middle. So that's where the securely attached folks can teach and try to see what can the avoidants learn. To come more into the middle and sit with the feeling more. Identify, label the feeling. Where do I feel this in my body? How does it make me feel? What will help me move out of the state? The anxiously attached folks can also learn how to not over-identify with the feelings and think all these terrible thoughts about themselves according to feeling states, but then rather attune to themselves and then see what they need. What do I need, or what do you need to move out of anxiety, sadness, grief, boredom, to move out of this? Maybe you need an adventure. Maybe you need connection. Maybe you need more space or time to yourself. All of those things are adequately attuning to what you need in the here and now. So my question to you all is to think, what do you think you need from yourself right here and right now?